You've heard this song for decades, in movies, on the radio, everywhere. But when Roxette first released It Must Have Been Love, almost nobody outside Sweden paid attention. At the time, the band was still unknown internationally. American radio rejected them. And while music executives kept saying Roxette would never work in the United States, a college exchange student in Minneapolis was unknowingly carrying the album that would change everything. And the song that would later define the band had already failed once as a Christmas single. Welcome back to Behind the Track. This is the story of how Roxette turned a forgotten Christmas song into one of the biggest breakup anthems of the 90s. Before the international success, there were already two established artists in Sweden. Per Gesle was the songwriter and frontman of Gyllene Tider, one of Sweden's biggest pop bands of the early 1980s. Marie Fredriksson had already established herself as one of the most respected voices in Swedish pop music. In 1986, Per Gesle wrote a song in Swedish called Svarta Glas for singer Pernilla Wahlgren. She never replied. Normally, that would have been the end of it, but the demo somehow reached EMI. The label suggested recording the song in English with Marie Fredriksson instead. At the time, Per Gesle's commercial momentum had started to decline. He had released 2 solo albums, and the second one had underperformed. Marie, meanwhile, was becoming one of Sweden's biggest solo stars. EMI worried that associating her with a side project connected to Per's declining popularity could damage her image. But Marie loved the song and wanted to record it anyway. Per had already been thinking for years about using the name Roxette, inspired by the 1975 song by the British band Dr. Feelgood. Roxette, I don't want no more rocket tricks. He originally wanted to use it for an international version of Gyllene Tider, but the idea never happened.
The band that Per was in before, we started Roxette. They split up, and then we get together and we said, hey, we have to try it like I said before. We can have a career worldwide. And we said, why not take Roxette? It's a great name.
The rewritten version of Svarta Glas became Never Ending Love, the first single released under the name Roxette. When Never Ending Love was released, the label avoided putting either of their faces on the cover. But the single quickly became a hit in Sweden. In 1986, Roxette released their first album, Pearls of Passion. It performed well in Sweden, but internationally, almost nothing happened. Outside Scandinavia, radio stations didn't know where to place them. They were too polished for rock radio, but too guitar-driven for pure pop. And in the late 80s, if radio couldn't categorize you, you usually didn't get played. EMI Germany believed a Christmas single could help introduce the band to a wider European audience. So in 1987, Per Gesle sat at the piano and wrote a ballad about heartbreak and regret, using Christmas as the backdrop.
A record company in Germany said, why don't you write a Christmas song? Because it might be easier for you to get on the radio if you have like a Christmas thing. So I went home and I wrote It Must Have Been Love, which with a Christmas lyric. And they listened to it, they liked it, but it wasn't released. So nobody really wanted it. It became a big hit in Sweden for us over Christmas in 1987.
The original title was It Must Have Been Love, Christmas for the Brokenhearted. It was essentially a breakup song wrapped in Christmas lights. The track reached the top 5 in Sweden, but outside the country, almost nothing happened. Ironically, EMI Germany, the same label that had requested the song, decided not to release it internationally. And once the song became associated with Christmas, its chances abroad became very limited. In 1988, Roxette released Look Sharp. The album produced several major hits across Europe, but in the United States, the band was still being ignored. American labels and radio programmers weren't convinced Roxette would work there. Then something happened that nobody in the music industry had planned. An American exchange student named Dean Cushman bought the Look Sharp CD while studying in Sweden and brought it back home to Minneapolis.
Kille som hade varit utbytesstudent i Stockholm och han gillade Roxette. Han rekommenderade att de skulle spela en Roxette-låt i radion.
Came back around Christmas time, so I had some time off. And that's when I took the CD and I had this idea that, hey, I should bring this into the radio station.
He walked into radio station KDWB, left the CD with program director Brian Phillips, and started calling repeatedly to follow up.
Cushman started to recur as a name that would be in my calls at the end of the day. He said, I'm back from Sweden. I love KDWB, and I've got a song that I want to send it to you. And I thought, well, please do. We will. Glad to hear it.
So I went in with no expectations and handed him this CD and said that this is some really good music that I heard in Sweden. It'd be real interesting for you to hear it.
It piqued my curiosity, but not enough for me to put it in a CD player. So it sat literally on the corner of my desk with a pile of other music.
Then I started to get worried that he may or may not listen to it.
For weeks, the CD sat untouched on a desk, until Brian finally played the first track, The Look.
När han ville ha tillbaka sin platta så lyssnade program directorn och Brian Phillips på plattan. Först låten var The Look och han blev helt så här, wow, det här är fantastiskt. Så att de spelade det där programmet och telefonerna började ringa och folk ville höra låten igen och igen och igen.
The reaction was immediate. Listeners started calling the station asking to hear the song again. Other stations quickly requested copies.
Den här radiostationen tillhörde ett radiosyndikat så att han skickade sen vidare den här låten på kassett till andra radiostationer som tillhörde samma syndikat som också fick samma resultat. Att folk började ringa igen och ingen visste vad det var för någonting, men låtens kraft var ju uppenbarligen så stor så att det gick inte att stoppa.
Before Roxette even had an official American release, they were already climbing the Billboard charts. Years later, Dean Cushman would still keep the letter KDWB sent him after the station tested The Look.
Thanks very much for dropping off your Roxette CD. As you may know, we are testing The Look. Response so far has been strong, and several other program directors in Milwaukee, Phoenix, and Kansas City have requested copies of the song. You may have started something! ! Nice.
The audience response had been so strong that the station immediately recognized it as a hit. What started with one student carrying a CD from Sweden had suddenly turned into Roxette's American breakthrough. The same band American radio had ignored was now impossible to overlook, but the song originally meant to open those international doors was still waiting in the background until Hollywood called. Touchstone Pictures was working on a romantic comedy called Pretty Woman.
Yeah, actually, we got a request from the Disney people who made the film if they wanted us to write a song for the soundtrack.
The production asked Roxette to write a song for one of the movie's key emotional scenes. But the band was in the middle of a world tour and didn't have time to record something completely new.
We were busy traveling all over the world promoting Look Sharp. But I have a Christmas song, and we can replace the Christmas lyric with a normal lyric, so to speak, a love song. And we can do some additional recordings with that song. It only takes like a day. And they said, fine.
The seasonal references were removed. Christmas Day became Winter's Day. A new intro was recorded, and the song was reshaped to fit the film. When director Gary Marshall heard the track, he made an unusual decision.
The director of the movie, Gary Marshall, he phoned me up. I was in the studio in Stockholm like 3 or 4 months later, and he just told me that, we never met, never even spoke. And he said, I just had a call because I just love this song so much, and I have re-edited the movie because I don't want any dialogue of this song. I want the song to speak for itself.
Pretty Woman became a global phenomenon, and this time It Must Have Been Love finally reached the audience it had missed 2 years earlier. The song went to #1 in the United States and became one of Roxette's defining records. But Per Gesle later admitted he felt disappointed after finally seeing the movie. Gary Marshall had told him the song would play a major role in the film, but in the final version, only about a minute of it was actually used. Ironically, even though Pretty Woman helped turn the song into a worldwide hit, neither Per nor Marie were especially fond of the movie itself.
Marie and I got invited to see the movie in Burbank, outside Los Angeles, and we didn't like it.
Really?
We're from Sweden. We're used to Ingmar Bergman stuff.
Yeah.
And in a strange way, that fit the story perfectly, because almost nothing about the success of It Must Have Been Love happened the way Roxette expected. The song was rejected internationally as a Christmas single. American radio ignored the band. Their breakthrough started because one student refused to stop calling a radio station, and the song that finally changed everything only made it into the movie by accident.
Must have been love by someone else. Must have been good.
Sometimes a song doesn't fail because it's bad. Sometimes it just waits for the right movie and the right moment. If you enjoyed this story, you can also watch the story of a massive hit song that ended in financial betrayal, depression, and the deaths of the very people who created it. This is Behind the Track, where every song has its story.